The wind howled through the peaks like an old god mourning something long forgotten. Jake Morrow wiped the sweat from his brow, even though the air was cold. The climb had taken 3 hours longer than planned, and the rest of the team wasn't exactly thrilled. "Bloody hell, Jake," muttered Gareth, adjusting the straps of his pack. "We passed 3 caves and a World War II bunker. Why this ridge?" Jake didn't answer right away. Instead, he pulled out a folded page from a leather-bound notebook. It was torn, stained, and marked with coordinates in faded pencil. "It's not about the caves," Jake said quietly. "It's about what was buried to hide from them." Behind him, Emma Quinn, the youngest of the crew and the team's drone pilot, launched her quadcopter into the air. The live feed flickered to life on her tablet. Seconds later, she froze. Guys? You're gonna wanna see this." The drone's camera swept over a plateau ahead, and there it was. A massive, humanoid shape, assembled from hundreds of ancient cobblestones, standing like a guardian overlooking the valley below. Time and weather had smoothed its features, but its size and presence were undeniable. At least 20 feet tall. Arms outstretched. And in the center of its chest, a hollow cavity that looked freshly disturbed. Jake stepped forward, eyes wide. "This isn't Celtic. It's not Norse. This is older." Then came the sound. Not from the drone, or the wind. But from deep within the statue, like a long, slow breath of stone. Emma looked up from her screen, pale as chalk. Did it just move? By dawn, the story had already gone viral. Footage of the colossal statue was splashed across every major news outlet. BBC, Sky News, CNN, even tabloids like the Daily Mirror were running with headlines like "Ancient Titan discovered in Scottish Highlands. Alien statue or lost civilization. British treasure hunters unearth mystery of the millennium." But none of them had the full picture. Inside a makeshift tent on the ridge, Jake sat hunched over a field laptop, scrubbing through the drone footage frame by frame. The rest of the team had barely slept. Gareth snored in the corner, while Emma clutched a mug of tea like it was keeping her sane. "There," Jake said suddenly. "Freeze it. Look." He pointed to a frame, just a few seconds before the drone's battery had died. The statue's eyes glowed. Not brightly. Not like in movies. But a faint shimmer, like moonlight caught in still water. "That's not sunlight," Emma whispered. "Nope," Jake said. "And that hollow in its chest. Look." The footage zoomed in. Inside the cavity, markings. Carvings. Symbols older than any known script. The edges of the cavity were scorched, blackened, like something had broken out, not in. Gareth stirred awake and muttered, "This better not be another cursed tomb thing. I still have PTSD from that crap in Turkey." Jake didn't laugh. "This is different." Emma pulled up live satellite feeds. "We're not alone up here anymore." A black SUV was winding its way up the dirt path below. Fast. Jake's phone buzzed, a number with no caller ID. Against his better judgment, he answered. A calm voice spoke, "Mr. Morrow, we suggest you leave the site. Immediately. This is no longer a civilian matter." Jake didn't reply. "Fine," the voice added, almost softly. "But know this, the last people who woke one of them didn't live long enough to understand what they'd found." The line went dead. At 6:42 a.m., the static-laced drone feed reached the laptop back at base camp. Emma sat frozen, her finger hovering above the pause button. The statue filled the screen, immense, wrong, watching. Its cobblestone body shimmered under the rising sun, casting distorted shadows over the mountain plateau. The air inside the tent felt tighter than it should have. Jake leaned in. "Rewind 10 seconds. She did. The statue's eyes flickered. Not a lens flare. Not sunlight. A soft internal glow, like some ancient ember had just caught breath. Emma finally exhaled. That's impossible. Jake didn't speak. He only stared. Outside, the wind whistled low, as if the mountain itself was holding its breath. An hour later, a shaky, 12-second clip hit the internet. A wildlife blogger from the nearby valley, who'd picked up the drone's frequency on a fluke, uploaded it without a title. Within 20 minutes, the video hit 1 million views. By the time Jake checked his phone, it had reached the front pages of Reddit, Twitter, and Discord servers with names like Ancient Tech Unlocked and Real Life Eldritch. Comments flooded in. No way this is CGI. Look at the shadows. Look at the birds. This isn't art. It's a warning. I live near there. That mountain isn't on any local hiking maps. Jake rubbed his eyes. This is spiraling out of control. Gareth returned from gathering firewood, dropped the logs, and stared at the screen. You too, what did you bring into the world? The silence was broken by tires crunching gravel. A black SUV crawled up the narrow trail, nearly silent. No license plates. No dust on the body. 4 men stepped out, moving as one. Gareth paled. Those aren't hikers. Emma whispered, they're not press either. Jake stuffed the hard drive into his coat, zipped it up. The men approached, black coats, communication earpieces, expressionless faces. One of them raised a hand, signaling to stop. Jake Morrow, the tallest one, asked, voice firm but eerily flat. Jake nodded slowly. We need you to come with us. For debriefing. Immediate extraction. Jake didn't move. Under what authority? The man smiled. Not kindly. The kind that doesn't leave paperwork. Emma stepped between them. You're not even police. You can't. The tall agent turned to her, calm. Ms. Quinn, your expertise is valuable. But not essential. 2 others subtly rested their hands near concealed weapons. Jake's mind raced. He could give them the drive. Pretend nothing happened. But the look in their eyes said it wouldn't matter. He backed away, hands visible. I don't want trouble. You already caused trouble, the man said. Then something changed. A low vibration passed through the earth, like the mountain's heartbeat skipped. Everyone paused. Even the agents looked around. From behind the tent, the statue pulsed again. Once. A dull, muffled sound, like something shifting inside stone. The agents turned, suddenly alarmed. Jake didn't hesitate, he ran. He sprinted past the edge of camp, down a hidden goat trail. Emma followed. Gareth grabbed the laptop and dove behind a snowbank. A blinding flash erupted behind them, not light, but absence, like someone ripped a hole in space. Then, silence. Jake stopped, heart pounding. Looked back. The SUV was still there. The agents were gone. No screams. No dust. Just a scorched outline where their boots had stood. Emma staggered beside him, breath caught in her throat. What did the statue do? Jake shook his head slowly. I don't think it was the statue. That night, inside a creaking abandoned cabin they found halfway down the ridge, Jake sat alone with the hard drive and the black cube he had found earlier, now warm in his hands. It pulsed in sync with his heartbeat. Or maybe his was syncing with it. Then, he heard something. Not a voice. Not exactly. A vibration, inside his skull, as if a thought had entered from outside. 1 down. He dropped the cube, but it kept pulsing, now glowing softly. Emma stared at him. Jake, what did it say? He looked up, pale and shaken. It knows we're listening. Across the UK, news anchors struggled to stay calm. Reports of unexplained disappearances near Inverness. Possible interference with military communications. Footage believed to be real, though experts are debating. By midnight, the broadcast clip had spread to 38 countries. A physics professor from Oxford claimed the statue's material had never been seen on Earth. A hacker leaked satellite images showing 2 more statues, in different parts of the world. The public devoured it. The governments denied it. But a few remembered something older than either. At 2:16 a.m., Jake's phone rang. No number. No ringtone. Just a faint hum. He answered. A voice like velvet on glass. Mr. Morrow. You've touched what was never meant to be found. Jake said nothing. You are now part of the equation. The pattern. The awakening. The line cut. Jake turned to Emma. We didn't wake a god. He looked out the window, toward the place where the statue had stood. We opened a prison. The SUV stopped 200 meters below their camp. 4 men in black tactical gear stepped out, scanning the ridge with military precision. No visible insignias. No words. Just a slow, deliberate ascent. Jake and the others quickly packed what they could. Gareth kept muttering curses under his breath. Emma buried the drone equipment under snow. Not good, she said, as the figures came closer. But Jake didn't move. He walked toward the statue instead, drawn like a moth to flame. His fingers traced the carvings inside the hollow chest, and something clicked. A deep, metallic thrum echoed from within the statue. The mountains around them trembled slightly. The agents paused, hands on their weapons. Then, a hidden compartment opened. Inside, wrapped in decayed leather, was a strange object, a cube made of an unknown, black stone. It was warm to the touch. It pulsed like a heartbeat. Jake grabbed it instinctively. One of the agents finally spoke. Put it down. Now. Jake didn't. The plateau was silent. Emma crouched beside the statue's base, fingers tracing the surface of the cobblestone legs. They weren't just stacked, they were interlocked, as if grown together over time like bone to bone. Jake, standing near the chest cavity, stared into it like a man looking over the edge of a cliff. The space inside wasn't hollow, not completely. There were panels, small symbols etched into smooth black stone, a strange contrast to the weather-worn exterior. The design was too deliberate. This wasn't built by primitive hands, Jake murmured. Someone engineered this. Emma's voice cracked a little. You mean, this is a machine? No, he said, eyes narrowing. Something worse. Something between. Behind the lowest panel, wedged in tight like a heart, was the object. It was perfectly cubical, the size of a closed fist, blacker than obsidian. When Jake pulled it free, the statue gave off a low, pulsing groan, like a wounded animal far underground. The moment he touched it, the wind stopped. Completely. No breeze. No rustle of trees. Not even the sound of breath. Time itself seemed to hesitate. Jake stumbled backward, holding the object with a trembling hand. Emma hissed, Jake, put it down. Something's wrong with it. But he couldn't. His fingers refused to let go. Inside his skull, something twitched. The cube was alive. Not in the biological sense, but aware. Jake couldn't describe how, only that it felt like standing in front of a mirror that was somehow looking back. The cube pulsed in his palm, syncing with his heart. Then, with no warning, images slammed into his head. A map. But not of any place he knew. Glowing dots, one where they stood, another far to the north, buried beneath ice. A structure. Larger than the statue. Hollow inside. And something moving within. His knees buckled. He hit the ground, panting, sweat on his brow despite the cold. Emma knelt beside him. "Jake, what did you see?" He looked at her with bloodshot eyes. "There's more." As the sun rose higher, its rays hit the statue's face, and the entire structure shuddered. Cobblestones retracted, grinding backward into the earth, revealing mechanisms beneath. Ancient gears. Circular symbols began glowing faintly across its surface. Gareth, just returning from scouting down the slope, dropped his pack and swore. "Why does this thing have an engine?" But Jake wasn't listening. He was watching the statue, as its chest began to close. Slowly. Deliberately. As if it had done this before. Emma ran forward, trying to stop it, but she was too late. The panel sealed shut with a deep, final clang. A breathless moment passed. Then the statue's head tilted. Only a few degrees. But it moved. Everyone froze. The air turned electric. Static crackled in their radios. Emma's drone, still in the air, began spinning out of control. The screens on their gear flickered with bursts of code, symbols none of them recognized. And in the span of 1 second, the agents were gone. Not running. Not hiding. Gone. As if pulled from the world. Jake ran to where they'd stood. Only a faint scorch mark remained. As if they'd been erased, or sacrificed. "Emma," he whispered. "This thing isn't ancient." She looked at him, shaken. "Then what is it?" Jake swallowed. "It's awake." The trauma hit like a wave. Gareth vomited behind a rock and sat down, refusing to speak. Emma collapsed to her knees, hugging herself. Her eyes were wide and distant, PTSD setting in too fast to process. Jake stood motionless, still holding the cube, the only one not shaken. Not because he wasn't afraid. But because some part of him wasn't afraid anymore. Some part was adapting. Or worse, accepting. He didn't tell the others what else he saw when the cube connected to him. Not yet. He saw the next one waking up. And it wasn't in Scotland. Inside the tent that night, Jake pulled out an old sketchbook. Notes from his late father, also a treasure hunter, a man obsessed with megalithic structures. There were drawings of stone giants. Spirals. Repeating patterns. Locations triangulated along fault lines and magnetic anomalies. One note stood out. The Titans sleep where the world breathes. If even one opens its eyes, the rest will hear. Jake turned the page. Underlined in red. ZOV 17. And a location, northern Greenland. He closed the book. "This wasn't the first," he muttered. "It's the signal." They tried to send a message out, just a warning. But every signal they sent was scrambled. Emails auto-deleted. GPS failed. Even satellite phones echoed their own words back with a 4-second delay, as if being recorded. When Jake finally reached a local ranger via old CB radio, the response chilled them all. "You're calling from Sector Red, aren't you? They told us no one goes up there. They told us it wasn't real." Then static. Jake looked at the statue one last time before they left. Its eyes had closed. The mouth had opened, just a crack. A line of frost had begun to form around it, spreading outward. Everything after that happened fast. The statue's eyes glowed again, brighter. A pulse of light burst from its core, and for a moment, everyone was blinded. The ground beneath them cracked like old bones. Then silence. When vision returned, the agents were gone. Not dead. Not unconscious. Gone. No trace. No footprints. No echo. Emma screamed. Gareth turned and ran down the trail, didn't stop. Jake stood frozen, the cube still in his hands. He could feel something inside his head. A whisper. Not a voice, exactly, but a pull. The cube projected a mental image, another mountain, far to the north. Snow-covered. Remote. And beneath it, another statue. Jake turned to Emma. There's more. They were halfway down the slope when the earth breathed. A low, inhuman thrum rolled beneath their feet like a whale's call through miles of ice. Trees shook. Loose stones rattled in their packs. It wasn't an earthquake. It was a signal. Emma turned pale. Is that the statue? Jake stopped walking. He glanced at the cube in his hand. It pulsed now, in perfect rhythm with the sound beneath them. No, he said. That's not the statue. They returned to the upper trail cautiously, hearts hammering. The black SUV still sat there, quiet and still, like a tombstone. Doors wide open. No bodies. No blood. Just absence. Inside, a military-grade tablet was still powered on, displaying a classified document. Project Cordon. ZOV-17. Subjects are to remain buried. Containment failure equals extinction level priority. Below that, coordinates. 2 new ones. One in Greenland. One in the Mariana Trench. Jake took a photo of the screen. Emma whispered, "You think they're connected?" Jake didn't answer. He already knew. They camped low that night, in the woods, away from the statue, though Jake could still feel it. He couldn't sleep. Not because of the cold, but because of the cube. It was whispering to him again. Not words, but concepts. Ideas. Visions. He saw titans made of stone and bone. Cities swallowed in seconds. A voice like thunder saying, "The locks are breaking. The warden sleeps. The hollow returns." Jake woke up screaming. Emma rushed over, flashlight shaking in her hand. "Jake, you're bleeding, your nose." His eyes were open but distant. "They're coming," he whispered. "They remember us." By morning, they climbed once more, not toward the statue, but around the plateau's edge, to gain elevation. What they saw made Gareth sit down and weep. The ground had changed. Where the statue once stood, the earth had cracked and spread outwards in a perfect spiral, almost 300 meters in diameter. The lines weren't natural. They were designed. From above, it looked like a massive eye had opened in the forest. Jake took a photo and said nothing. Inside, the cube pulsed again. Once. Twice. Then. Boom. A sound like a detonated mountain, but from beneath. That afternoon, the world began to glitch. The GPS lost all precision. Their compass spun uncontrollably. Cell signals vanished, and when they returned, they were filled with strange static patterns. Emma replayed a voicemail from her mother. But it wasn't her mother's voice. It repeated her name, once, twice, and then played back Emma's own voice from earlier that day, whispering. "Don't go north. Don't go north. Don't go." Then silence. Jake looked at her, equally horrified. The signal's not broadcasting. It's feeding back. They made one final trek to a nearby cave Gareth had noticed earlier in satellite imagery. Inside, behind centuries of fallen stone, they found carvings. Old ones. Thousands of years old. They depicted figures, humans, or close to it, kneeling before giant shapes with hollow chests and spiraled heads. A single line of symbols was etched beneath every scene. "We did not build them. We survived after them." And one more. "When the pulse is heard, bury the mouth." Jake's hand trembled. "These aren't statues," he said. "They're warnings." That night, the forest watched them. They heard twigs snap where there were no animals. Shadows moved against moonlight. Something shifted in the trees. Not footsteps. Not breathing. Just pressure. Like being stared at by something too large to be real. Emma kept her rifle in her lap. Gareth wouldn't stop praying. Jake sat with the cube in front of him, waiting. At 3:17 a.m., it pulsed once, and everything stopped. Crickets. Wind. Even the stars seemed to blink. Then came a low growl, not from around them, but from beneath the earth. At dawn, Jake pulled out the hard drive they salvaged from the SUV. Emma bypassed the encryption. What they saw made her drop the laptop. A 3D rendering of the planet, glowing softly. 11 points across the globe, slowly flashing red. One already gone dark, the Scottish statue. The second? Greenland. The third? Iceland. A chain reaction. Each point was labeled with a term in ancient Greek. Theta Upsilon Rho Alpha, Thura, door. Then came the final screen. Active status, 3 out of 11. Lock sequence broken. Release imminent. Jake stared at the message, heart pounding. 3 are already awake. Emma whispered, "What happens at 11?" Jake looked up. "The world ends." Back in Edinburgh, the remaining 2 flew low, avoiding any airspace with radar. Emma traced coordinates on a 19th-century explorer's journal she'd stolen from a museum archive years ago. To their shock, the statues were marked. Not by name, but with a repeating symbol, a spiral inside a circle, labeled only "those who slept." The journal spoke of an ancient people that didn't worship gods, they buried them. Each statue was not a monument, it was a prison. Jake looked at the cube again. It pulsed faster now. "Emma, we didn't find a relic, we found a key." The plane was old. Loud. Freezing inside. Emma huddled under 2 jackets, her fingers stiff even inside gloves. Jake sat beside her, eyes locked on a hand-drawn map taken from his father's notebook, now updated with coordinates from the cube. Their destination, Camp Arkin. A decommissioned glaciological outpost on Greenland's northeastern ice sheet, last visited in 1997. Officially shut down due to unstable terrain. Unofficially, there were rumors. Whispers. A research team that didn't come back. A final transmission that ended mid-sentence. "It's not under the ice. It is the ice." Landing was a bone-jarring nightmare. Whiteout winds slammed the aircraft as it touched down on a rough ice strip. The camp itself was nothing but a skeletal structure of prefabs half buried in drift. Inside, everything was covered in frost, old documents fused to desks, broken lab equipment, shattered thermal glass. Jake powered up the base's generator. Lights flickered weakly. Then they heard it, a single, rhythmic thump. It came every 13 seconds. Deep. Low. Like a mechanical heartbeat buried miles below. Jake turned to Emma. "It's already awake." Behind the camp, they found a chasm. A crevasse that wasn't there in the 1997 satellite images, but now stretched 200 meters across, dark and yawning. Emma flew a drone into it. The feed showed walls etched with smooth, unnatural grooves. Not ice. Not rock. Architecture. And more than that, symbols. The same spiral and glyphs they'd seen in Scotland. But deeper here. More refined. And mixed with something new. Vertical lines like vertebrae. A pattern repeating like DNA. Emma zoomed in. Her voice cracked. "These aren't just warnings. They're schematics." In the main lab, buried under decades of frostbitten notes, Gareth found something. A tape recorder. Old. Soviet. They powered it up with a makeshift adapter. Static. Then a voice, male, Russian accented, terrified. It pulses through the floor, we are not alone. We are above something, and it hates being asleep. The voice dissolved into screaming. And something else. A rumbling growl, not from the recorder, but from beneath the lab, shaking the walls. Jake grabbed the cube. It wasn't pulsing now. It was vibrating. They descended into the ice fissure the next day, rappelling gear clinking like nervous breath. The cavern beneath was impossibly vast, a dome of translucent blue and black. At its center, barely visible in the dim light, lay a form the size of a building. A massive body, curled like a fetus. Not quite humanoid. Not quite alien. A torso of interwoven plates. A chest cavity shaped exactly like the Scottish statue. But unlike that one, this one was cracked open. Jake approached slowly. Emma whispered, "It's breathing." And it was. As Jake stepped closer, the cube in his pocket lit up, violently. It floated from his hand, levitated toward the chest cavity, and hovered just above the exposed, metallic ribs. Then a voice entered his head. Not words. Not sound. Just understanding. You are late. We are fractured. The seals are fading. The hollow returns. Jake fell to his knees, nose bleeding again. The cube dropped, scorched black now, inert. Emma screamed, pulling him back. Jake whispered, barely conscious. It's not one being, it's a hive. A collective. A prison built around a mind too big to fit in one body. They sent a distress signal through every channel they could reach. Military satellites. Academic networks. Pirate radio. Nothing replied, except for one signal. It came in encrypted. A black screen and then a single line. Do not approach point 4. Lockdown active. Jake opened the map. Point 4 was Iceland. The next prison. The message blinked once, then corrupted into gibberish. But they understood. The statues weren't monuments. They were locks in a global containment net. And someone, somewhere, was actively trying to stop what Jake had just accelerated. They hiked back to Camp Arkin in silence. The sky was unnaturally clear. Stars hung too low. Time moved strangely, watches desynced, the sun didn't rise when it should have. Inside the camp, Gareth refused to speak. He sat in a corner, whispering to himself, eyes wide. Jake packed. He didn't need to say it, they were going to Iceland next. Emma checked the final frame from the drone, frozen before the battery died. She zoomed into the exposed ribcage of the creature beneath the ice. In one frozen crevice, she saw it. A human skeleton, perfectly preserved, embedded into the metal. Wearing modern climbing gear. Jake didn't blink. It already got someone before us. The next site was worse. Remote. Isolated. Buried beneath ice. As they dug through snow and rock, they unearthed another one, taller, broader, but with a shattered head. The chest cavity on this one was open and empty. Jake fell to his knees. It's already awake. Suddenly, their radio crackled, a voice, scrambled and warped. You've broken the seal. Return the key. Or they all wake. The air grew heavy. Far below, in the valley, a distant shadow moved, fast, massive, and silent. Something was coming. The helicopter dropped them 20 kilometers from the site. Snow swirled sideways in choking gusts. The black ridges of Icelandic stone stabbed through the frost like the spine of something long dead and still dangerous. Their destination, called a supposedly extinct volcano and, according to both the cube and the corrupted satellite data, home to the third vault. As they crested the first ridge, they saw the smoke. Not natural. Not sulfuric. Just thick, black, burnt metal. Nestled between obsidian cliffs was a concrete bunker, half buried in the ash. Weathered signs in Icelandic warned of geothermal instability, but the symbol beneath was not standard. A spiral, circled twice. The same symbol they saw in the Scottish glyphs. They entered through a rusted side door. Inside, dead monitors, frostbitten corpses, blood patterns that didn't match any known weapon's trajectory. Something had pulled people upward. Not outward. Emma whispered, "What the hell were they studying?" Jake replied, "Not studying. Guarding." Beneath the outpost was a tunnel, not carved, but melted, curved in exact geometry. It led deep under the volcanic rock, until they reached what felt like a heart. The chamber was enormous. At its center was the third entity, embedded halfway into the wall, a titan curled inward, mouth wide open, eyes sealed shut. Its entire body was cracked open from the inside. Panels of stone had been pushed outward. The chest cavity looked torn apart. Something had escaped. On the floor, melted restraints. Jake's voice was hollow. "This one didn't just wake up." Emma nodded. "It broke out. Whatever had escaped didn't vanish without trace. They followed damage, collapsed tunnels, scorched floors, shattered seismic nodes. On the walls were claw marks, long, almost elegant, as if carved by something with fingers longer than human arms. Then came something worse. Boot prints. Multiple pairs. Fresh. A team had been here. Maybe hours ago. Gareth froze. What if, there's someone else chasing these things too? Jake exhaled slowly. Or setting them free. They found a camp at the mouth of a secondary tunnel. 3 bodies. No visible wounds, just burned from the inside out. Each wore Arctic tactical gear with a patch Jake had never seen. ORDO, Vigilantia Interna. Inside one of their sat phones, Emma found an encrypted audio log. She cracked it. Subject 3 has breached its cell. Protocol Theta initiated. Team B is gone. We've failed. Repeat, we. Static. Then a second voice, far older, deeper, not part of the recording. You forgot the first law: if it breathes without lungs, it never stopped watching. Jake stood frozen. They weren't chasing it. They were trying to contain it. Deeper in the structure, they found a room like nothing on Earth. Smooth black walls curved inward like a sphere. In the center, a pool of quicksilver-like fluid, not frozen, somehow warm. As Jake approached, his reflection fractured, and changed. He saw another version of himself. Older. Scarred. Alone. Speaking in a language his mouth didn't know, but his mind understood. Then the image shifted, showing the surface of the Earth, covered in glowing spiral marks, giant shadows moving beneath oceans, cities crumbling inward like swallowed wounds. Jake collapsed backward. Emma pulled him out. You were gone for 10 seconds, she said. Jake looked at her, eyes full of something ancient. It showed me what happens if the 11th one wakes. That night, in the ruins of the outpost, Emma noticed something on Jake's skin. A spiral mark, faint, red, glowing under blacklight. The same as on the vault walls. She pulled away. Jake, they've done something to you. Jake didn't react. Or maybe he couldn't. He stared at the wall of the outpost, where someone had carved a message in Latin. Ego nos susurrat in somnis. It whispers to us in dreams. In the early hours, they heard footsteps. But no one came. Then a light. A dim red flare tossed down into the cave from somewhere above. A warning. Or a signal. And finally, a transmission. Not a call. Just a voice, bleeding into their emergency frequency like oil through water. 4 locks broken. 8 still hum. You will not stop the pattern. Only shape its direction. The cube pulsed once more, then turned black and split down the middle. Jake said nothing. Emma's hands were shaking. Gareth wept openly. They were no longer explorers. Not even witnesses. They were now part of the equation. At midnight, the first statue, the original one in the Highlands, collapsed. TV footage showed chunks of cobblestone flying as something massive crawled free from beneath it. Not a golem. Not a robot. Something organic, ancient, inhumanly shaped. A being made of stone, but alive. A titan. The news called it a hoax. The government called it a geological anomaly. Jake knew better. There are more. And we just gave them a way out. The cube responded, glowing red. Emma, Jake said, if we don't find the third seal, we won't be able to stop the others. Following the cube's pulse, they arrived in Iceland, a volcano long dormant, now rumbling. Inside, in the magma tunnels, they found the third statue, twisted, misshapen, and cracked open from the inside. No signs of worship. Only warning glyphs, like scars across its surface. The last gate wasn't a seal. It was a lock. And it had already failed. Jake placed the cube into a strange socket in the stone. The earth around them groaned. The mountain began to cave. Voices, not human, filled their minds. The guardians are no more. The cycle begins again. Emma grabbed Jake's arm. Can we still stop it? Jake stared ahead. I don't think we were ever meant to. 1 month later, all footage of the statues had vanished. News stations retracted stories. Internet archives were wiped. Emma disappeared. Jake lives off-grid now, somewhere in the Canadian wilderness, the black cube buried beneath a frozen lake. Every night, he hears the whisper. Every night, he dreams of stone gods walking beneath the earth, waiting for the sky to break open again. And he knows. They're not done. Not yet.